Absolute mayhem at the BBC, ladies and gentlemen. If you thought British politics was reaching a boiling point, you have not seen anything yet. Imagine the scene, a high-stakes evening broadcast, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, sitting comfortably in his chair, prepared for a gentle roasting over tea and biscuits. Enter Tom Hardy. Yes, that Tom Hardy, the man who played Bane, Mad Max and The Craze. But he was not there to promote a film. He was there to represent a nation that is reaching its breaking point. In a 15-minute live confrontation that has sent shockwaves through Downing Street, Hardy did not just ask questions, he dismantled the entire Starmer persona in front of millions. The footage is being scrubbed from official channels as we speak, but the internet never forgets. From the King of the North being blocked in Manchester to the Super Embassy in London, Hardy hit every nerve, and for the first time we saw the Prime Minister's mask completely shatter on live television. Quick favour, if you're loving this, hit that subscribe button. Over 92% of viewers haven't yet. It's free, takes a second and means the world to us. Thanks. If you did, now back to the show.
30 new turns and counting. Perhaps we should begin to feel sorry for Sir Keir Starmer, because everything he touches turns to ashes and wormwood. He has the reverse Midas touch, that he doesn't seem to be able to get anything right. Take the recent events with Donald Trump.
It was supposed to be a standard PR victory for number 10. Sir Keir Starmer's team had meticulously planned a humanising interview on the BBC to deflect from his cratering approval ratings, which, let us be honest, are currently hovering somewhere near the bottom of a very deep well. They wanted a celebrity guest to provide a bit of glamour, a bit of working-class hero energy to rub off on the Prime Minister. They chose Tom Hardy. It was a catastrophic error. Hardy did not walk on set as a Hollywood star. He walked on as a lad from Hammersmith who remembers exactly what it is like to see his community struggle. The producers thought they were getting an actor who would play his part in the political theatre. They assumed the council estate kid who made it big would be grateful for the invitation. They were catastrophically wrong. The tension was immediate. When Starmer extended his hand for that classic "We are all friends here" photo op, Hardy did not move. He stared at the hand like it was toxic waste. 3 seconds of dead silence on live television feels like an eternity. You could practically hear the BBC producers in the gallery swallowing their tongues. The host tried to laugh it off, making a joke about method acting, but nobody laughed. Then Hardy leaned in, his voice that low, gravelly rumble we all know, and asked the question that has now become the headline. You know what, Keir? I came here tonight because I wanted to look you in the eye when I asked you this. How do you sleep at night? The studio air turned to ice. Starmer's rehearsed smile did not just fade, it curdled. The Prime Minister tried to reach for his political training, searching for the right deflection, but Hardy was already 5 steps ahead with receipts that no focus group could handle. Hardy did not come with vague grievances, he came with names. He spoke about the 73-year-old pensioner in Manchester choosing between heating and blood pressure medication. He mentioned the small business owner in Birmingham who just had to lay off staff of 15 years because of the new tax burdens. He brought up the veterans sleeping under London bridges while the government prioritises diplomatic bridge building and international optics. Every example hit like a sledgehammer. Starmer tried the usual line, "These are difficult decisions for the long term, part of a broader mandate for change." Hardy cut him off before he could even finish the sentence. "Don't give me the politician answer," Hardy snapped. "These aren't statistics, these are human beings. You're sitting there in your designer suit, protected, guaranteed your salary, talking about sacrifice like you're the one making it." It was a visceral, punchy strike that bypassed the usual political jargon and hit the Prime Minister exactly where it hurt, his perceived disconnect from the ordinary British citizen. The camera found Starmer's face, and that is when the polished mask cracked. Just for a second, the cameras caught it. Irritation, contempt, the barely hidden arrogance of someone who is used to controlling every interview, now facing someone who does not play by those rules. While the Prime Minister was reeling from the domestic hits, the conversation took a sharp turn toward the international stage, where the new Labour foreign policy is looking more like an old-fashioned surrender. This is where things got truly heated. Hardy brought up the fact that Starmer is scheduled to travel to Beijing this week, the first prime ministerial visit in 8 years, all while approving a massive Chinese super embassy in the heart of London. Critics are calling it a fortress of influence, and Hardy did not hold back. He asked Starmer why the government is kowtowing to a regime that is actively suppressing British citizens like Jimmy Lai in Hong Kong. Hardy's homework was impeccable. He was not just shouting, he was citing data that the BBC usually ignores. Starmer tried to argue that security and intelligence services say one site is better for security. Hardy laughed, a bitter, disbelieving sound. You've got at least 75 covert influence outposts across the UK, according to the latest reports, and your answer is to give them a bigger front door. That's not security, Keir, that's a surrender. The Prime Minister's face went from pale to a deep, embarrassed crimson. The King of the North might be blocked from Westminster, but the King of the East End was currently occupying the Prime Minister's head, rent-free. The host tried to cut to commercial, but Hardy ignored him completely, leaning further into Starmer's personal space. The host made one final desperate attempt to steer the conversation back to Hardy's latest film project, hoping to save the broadcast from becoming a total political execution. When the host asked about Hardy's upcoming roles and whether there was any exclusive news for the viewers, the actor looked at him with such withering contempt that the man physically shrank in his seat. You think that matters right now? Hardy asked. The country is falling apart, people are terrified of their next bill, and you want movie gossip? This is exactly the problem. Media and politicians are more interested in distraction than truth. He then did something extraordinary. He turned his back on the host, ignored Starmer entirely, and spoke directly into the camera lens. He spoke straight to Britain. He told the viewers, if you're watching this and you're struggling, if you feel like nobody in power cares, I want you to know something. You're not imagining it. They don't care. They've built a system that protects them and exploits you. They're counting on you being too tired to fight back, but you have power, and it is time to use it. It was a Mad Max moment in real life. He was not just an actor, he was a conduit for the frustration of millions of Britons who feel left behind by a government that seems more interested in its own internal psychodramas than the actual state of the nation. As security began to mill around the edges of the set, BBC security and government protection officers approaching carefully, the Prime Minister made one final, fatal mistake. Starmer suggested that perhaps actors should stick to entertainment and leave the complexities of governance to the professionals. You could almost see the sparks fly. This was the moment the Prime Minister tried to use the high road, but it was paved with condescension. Hardy's response was instant and lethal. I'm just an actor, you're right, but I grew up in council housing. My mum was a painter. My dad worked whatever jobs he could get. I've seen real Britain. You went from public school straight into the legal elite. You've never struggled a day in your life, and it shows in every policy you push.
Pretty boy Andy Burnham might have found a route back to Parliament via a by-election.
Is this Keir Starmer's worst nightmare?
You could end up with an even more left-wing Labour Party. I mean, those of us on the right think this Labour Party is catastrophically left-wing and has wreaked extreme damage on this country as a result of its absurd policies. But just wait until we get the next Labour leader.
Camilla, everyone assumes that the strongest challenger to Keir Starmer within the Labour Party would be Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham. The problem is, he's not in Parliament.
No.
The professional mask Starmer wears so tightly was ripped away. He looked like a man who had been hit by a truck. He tried to pivot to complexity and nuance, but Hardy destroyed it in one sentence. There's nothing complex about right and wrong. You're taking from people with nothing and protecting people with everything. That's not complexity, that's corruption. Legal corruption maybe, but corruption nonetheless. The word corruption landed like a bomb. Starmer's handlers approached the stage trying to end this disaster, but it was too late. Hardy brought specific policy numbers, wait times, tax burdens and service cuts. This was not celebrity virtue signalling. He had done his homework and he dismantled every Starmer talking point with hard data. The fallout from this 15-minute Hardy hurricane has moved beyond the studio walls and into the heart of the British constitutional debate, and the establishment is terrified. Within minutes of the broadcast ending, the BBC's social media clips were being taken down. Copyright issues and editorial review, they claimed. But the viewers had already recorded it. Millions of people are sharing the footage on every platform imaginable. The establishment response has been predictable. The usual pundits are calling Hardy unstable, uninformed and irresponsible. They are trying to protect the Prime Minister by framing the actor as a celebrity who has lost the plot. They are questioning whether actors should involve themselves in politics, but they never ask that when celebrities are endorsing their policies. The BBC apologised for the confrontation, promising to review their booking procedures, which is just code for make sure this never happens again. Keep everything controlled, pre-approved, safe. But something has shifted. Hardy said publicly what millions think privately, and no amount of damage control can erase that. Suddenly, people across Britain are talking openly about government competence, elite disconnect, and the feeling that democracy has become theatre. The conversation changed, and the establishment knows it. They are scrambling to contain the fire, but Hardy has already handed out the matches to the entire country. While the media tries to bury the story, the reality of what happened on that set is being discussed in every pub and workplace across the nation. Hardy did not stop at personal attacks. He brought up the King of the North, Andy Burnham. He pointed out the sheer arrogance of the National Executive Committee, led by Starmer, blocking a popular local leader from standing for Parliament in Gorton and Denton. You're so afraid of someone with a pulse and a bit of charisma that you'd rather lose a seat to reform than let a man like Andy help, Hardy observed. This hit a raw nerve because it highlighted the control freakery of the current Downing Street operation. Hardy compared the Labour Party to a corporate takeover where the local branch managers are being fired because they are more popular than the CEO. He asked how Starmer can talk about democracy while systematically dismantling it within his own party. The irony was so thick you could spread it on a crumpet. Starmer looked like he wanted to cite a specific clause in the Labour handbook, but he realised that citing a rulebook to Tom Hardy is like bringing a spoon to a knife fight. It reinforced the image of Starmer as a party operative who got promoted past his competence level, destroying lives while facing zero consequences. Let us dive deeper into the fallout, because this is about more than just a televised spat. It is about the structural integrity of the British government in early 2026. The British report team has been monitoring the local sentiment in the areas Hardy mentioned: Manchester, Birmingham, London, and the feedback is unanimous. For years, there has been a feeling of being gaslit by official statistics. When the Prime Minister says growth is up, but your local butcher shop is closing, there is a mental friction that eventually snaps. Tom Hardy was that snap. He touched on the two-tier Britain narrative that has been simmering under the surface. It is the idea that there is a class of people, the suit class, who move from university to think tanks to Parliament without ever having to worry about a rising interest rate or a cancelled bus service. Starmer, with his knighthood and his carefully manicured legal background, is the poster child for this class. Hardy, meanwhile, represents the working success, the people who made it out of the struggle but kept their souls intact. When those two worlds collided on the BBC, it was not just a debate, it was a cultural reckoning. The establishment is terrified because they do not have an answer for someone like Hardy. You cannot cancel him, he is too big. You cannot buy him. He has more money than most of the cabinet combined. All they can do is try to hide the footage. As the video of the encounter continues to bypass the censors, we have to look at the specific red lines Hardy crossed that have Downing Street advisors losing their sleep. Hardy's focus on the Chinese super embassy was a stroke of genius. It is a topic that unites the left-wing activists concerned about human rights and the right-wing patriots concerned about national security. By framing it as a fortress of influence being built in the shadow of the Tower of London, he made the Prime Minister look like a property developer for foreign powers rather than a leader of his own people. Starmer's defence that it is a planning matter overseen by appropriate authorities fell utterly flat. Hardy's retort was a masterclass in suspenseful delivery. You're the Prime Minister, Keir. If the safety of our capital isn't your appropriate matter, then what is? The footage shows Starmer literally fidgeting with his notes at this point. It was the first time a mainstream figure has called out the golden era policy for what it is, a transactional relationship where British values are the currency being spent. Hardy mentioned the clandestine police stations allegedly operated by foreign regimes on UK soil, asking why the Prime Minister is more interested in policing Twitter than policing our borders. The silence that followed was deafening. It exposed a government that is tough on critics but soft on competitors. The Prime Minister's attempt to regain control led to the most controversial moment of the night, the mention of populism. When Starmer finally found his voice, he tried to dismiss Hardy's points as dangerous populist rhetoric. It is the standard defensive move for a politician backed into a corner. If you cannot win the argument, label the opponent a populist and hope the audience is afraid of the word. But Hardy was ready. You call it populism because it's popular, Hardy fired back. You call it dangerous because it threatens your comfortable little bubble. If caring about whether an old lady freezes to death is populist, then I'm a populist, and so is everyone watching this who isn't on your payroll. This is the central conflict of 2026 politics. The elite define populism as anything that challenges their management of the state. The people define it as common sense. By accepting the label and wearing it as a badge of honour, Hardie disarmed the Prime Minister's best weapon. He made Starmer look like a man who is afraid of his own voters. It was a political execution happening in real time, and the BBC producers' frantic gestures in the background only added to the drama. They knew that every second this stayed on air, 1,000 votes were evaporating from the Labour heartlands. As we approach the final minutes of this legendary broadcast, we have to talk about the Hardie shot, the moment that changed the tone of British discourse forever.
Boris Johnson has a reputation as being a politician who lies, right?
Yeah.
Boris Johnson did not lie anywhere near as often nor as brazenly, nor with the sense of sanctimoniousness with which our current Prime Minister lies. Lies every single day. His entire political career was built on lies. The lie about the second referendum that he said he wasn't preparing but was actually secretly working for. The lie he told to the Labour electorate that he was a massive left-winger and then switched to being a moderate as soon as he got in. And then the lie he told to the general election that he was some massive moderate and then switched to becoming a left-winger as soon as he's in power. I mean, this is lie after lie after lie.
But yeah, I mean, it's not just Keir Starmer. There is a lot of that going on in all political parties at the moment. But that was, I mean, the morning after, the night before, that was a blatant lie. Your taxes are going up because we're putting more into the NHS. Might be putting more into the NHS, but your taxes are going up because you're putting more into that benefits bill. And that is an actual fact. And Harry could stand there and say, no, we need all this tax to pay into the NHS, when actually most of your taxes will be going for the benefits bill.
Well, shall we speak to
You're better off sitting at home having loads of babies.
The confrontation reached its peak when Hardie stood up. He did not wait for the segment to end. He did not wait for the host to thank him. He stood up while Starmer was still mid-sentence, talking about inclusive growth. Hardie walked toward the edge of the stage, but stopped, turned around and looked directly into the Prime Minister's eyes. "I'm going to go back to my life now," Hardie said, his voice dropping to that lethal, quiet tone. "But you have to stay here. You have to live with the choices you're making. And when the history of this period is written, it won't be about your nuance or your mandates. It will be about the man who had everything and did nothing for the people who had nothing." The studio was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Starmer looked like a man who had seen a ghost. The host tried one last time to ask about Hardie's upcoming projects, but Hardie just shook his head and walked off into the darkness of the wings. He did not look back. He did not wave. He left a vacuum of silence that Starmer tried to fill with a generic statement about delivering for the British people, but it sounded like a ghost rattling chains in an empty house. The Hardie shot was not just an exit, it was a verdict. The fallout is only just beginning. We are seeing a massive shift in the polls, a rise in direct action groups, and a Prime Minister who looks increasingly isolated. So, what does this mean for the future of Britain? We are at a crossroads. The establishment is counting on you to be too tired to fight back. They want you to move on to the next celebrity scandal or the next football match. They want to frame this as just an actor being dramatic. But you saw it. You saw the truth. You saw the fear in the Prime Minister's eyes when he was confronted with the human reality of his policies. This is the moment where the British report asks you to pay attention. The conversation has shifted from government competence to moral authority. If a Hollywood actor can dismantle the Prime Minister in 15 minutes, what does that say about the strength of the government? It tells us that the mandate of 2024 is gone. The people are looking for a leader, and instead they found a party operative. Tom Hardie did not just humiliate Keir Starmer, he gave a voice to the voiceless. The media will try to bury this, but you can keep the flame alive. Share this video, talk to your neighbours, and remember that you have the power to demand better. The reckoning Tom Hardie started is just the beginning. Thank you for watching.